Hey everybody, welcome back to Herding Squirrels, a podcast about modern teams and change. Today we are so lucky to have a returning guest. You may remember Frédéric. Frédéric Rivain is the CTO at Dashlane, a leading cybersecurity company specializing in credential management and digital identity solutions. And he is also a passionate advocate for user-centric security. Frédéric, welcome back. We're so pumped to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me back.
So, the reason we wanted Frédéric back on is he's been working on some AI adoption and change, which is not surprising given where we're at in the world today. And last time we were talking, you had mentioned that you were driving the AI journey for your product and engineering teams, and that this is a particularly unique story given that Dashlane is a security company at its core. So tell us a little more about what's going on in your journey.
Yeah, and there's two sides of the story, and one is, of course, how we use AI internally at Dashlane within the team and how to improve our productivity and augment ourselves. But then we can also talk about how we try to use AI inside the product, because this is also an interesting part of the story.
All right.
But coming back to the first part, and as you mentioned, we are a security product. So as you can imagine, when all those AI tools started appearing, there was a good sense of skepticism from the team and the engineers. Like, okay, but is that going to generate a lot of crappy code and a lot of insecure code? And so we had to sort of take our own journey to get there and try and convince everybody that doing it the right way was still beneficial for the organization. So it was as much of a change management story and the people changing their habits more than a technical story. Of course, there was a lot of technical things to learn and to discover and to experiment with, but at the end of the day, it was more like, okay, how do we get past the hesitancy, and how do we convince everybody that they're there? And so it's been an interesting journey. Like things that we've done was, for instance, at first, a very small pilot with a few ambassadors that were already kind of bought in, that were playing in their little corner and so on. And the problem is that it stays like that way for a long time. And you need to get out of the box at some point and say, okay, look what we've done, it looks cool, do you want to do the same? And so at some point we said, okay, let's now try to expand this and have a real pilot across the engineering team. Let's get mostly the staff engineers and the more senior engineers of the team to really put their hands dirty into using those AI tools. So that was kind of the phase 2. Phase 3 was, okay, there's a there, everybody seems to be on board, but now it's time to roll out. And of course, this was also accelerated with the maturity of the tools. Like when Cloud Code became really more mature and mainstream, that gave us also a good, solid foundation to be able to say, okay, that's the time when we need to start generalizing to everybody. So that's kind of what we did last year. Let's roll out AI tools to everybody across engineering. And we don't mandate for you to use it, but you need to try. You need to play, you need to learn, you need to become fluent, you need to understand what are the limitations, where are the good use cases, where it's not working well, and so on. But at least we want you to have your own opinion and point of view on how we are going to use that type of tool, which at the end of the day is going to be a critical tool for the future of software engineers. So. And now we've been iterating from there. We started adding MCPs across our different systems. We started, of course, we wanted to do it in a secure way. So we also built dev containers to sandbox the AI and the Cloud Code inside to avoid the tool to be able to access everything on your file system. And we're doing one step at a time. But of course, we're seeing the improvement. I don't think we're still at a stage where I can say that we are a mature organization using AI for everything. Like. It was funny. Like a few months back, I was on a call with other CTOs from one of our from the portfolio of one of our VCs, and of course, around the table there were a variety of different industries, and you had that CTO from the marketing tech company that was already using AI agents, orchestrators, and generating landing page in a crazy way. And on the other side, there was me, a security product. There was someone from defense that was very much more, oh, slowly, let's be careful about all those tools. We know it's going to be a very dangerous thing to do. And so, well, the truth is, of course, in the middle. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey, for sure.
Yeah. I love that tension where you're like, well, yeah, the marketing guys doing, yeah, of course, right? They're playing. It's like it's the playground, but as a security company, you have this extra expectation, this necessity to contain it and ensure that what you're doing is predictable, right?
And by the way, we also have the same syndrome as I guess any other organization, which is like coding with AI has gone beyond engineering. And now we have other functions that start coding with AI, whether it's someone from customer support doing a little internal tool using a cloud, or someone from the design team doing prototyping, someone, a sales engineer doing a tool that is actually putting in the hands of customers, and that makes me like very anxious. I recently told the whole organization in a town hall, by the way, we're going to give more guidance, more guardrails about how we can do those things, but you need to pay attention and be careful, because at the end of the day, whether the code is human generated or AI generated, you are accountable for that code. So use the same guardrail, use the same practices as what we have in engineering. If you're coding, however you're coding, you need to be careful.
You're accountable.
Yeah, you're accountable, exactly.
Fantastic framing. So I want to go back a little bit, starting with the ambassadors first. Tell me a little bit about that approach. Like, how did you come up with that approach? Why that approach? And just talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I knew, knowing my engineering team, very security conscious, security focused, that we would have to go past the the skepticism. And so the easiest way in those cases is to show by example. We had created a small Slack channel called I think it was called Generative AI Enthusiasts. And so everybody that was kind of an enthusiast on the topic was posting stuff in there, like ideas of things they've been playing with in their free time or even at work. And so that's the group we kind of gathered together and say, okay, go one step further, try to start really using it internally for your own daily work. We made a GitHub Copilot available, along with, we played a bit with Cursor at some point, with Cloud Code, with ChatGPT. We played a bit with all different tools to give them the freedom to experiment, but in a secure way, let's say. So not really at scale and not with code that would go to production, but at least like play with it. And once we felt that we had achieved the right level of overall interest, that's when you said, okay, now we need to make it more structured. It needs to be really a real initiative across the engineering team with a pilot and so on. But at least we had those first, we had planted those seeds that were starting to bloom, like, the grassroots initiative type of.
There's so much wisdom in that approach. I believe, right? The ambassadors, you're taking excitement where it already exists. You don't have to build. you're harnessing it and saying, okay, you are already excited about this. Let's take that and use it and yeah, give you some space to have fun, to play, of course, right, in a structured, controlled way. But yeah, let's see what you can do.
Exactly, and it's no matter what, it's going to be a long and complicated journey. So you might as well try to at least remove some part of the friction along the way, and those that are bought in already, that you don't have to convince, use them to be the springboard for the rest, and then they can show by example. They can also create emulation across the group, and show that now they're. One good example from last year also was that we had that big refactoring of some part of our monetization system. And it was very painful because it's very deeply embedded across all backend systems, and there's a lot of tests. Like, you need integration tests that are relying on that backend system. So if you move it, you also need to recreate all the tests. And I think if we would have done it manually, it would have created, I don't know, it would have taken like months and months, because I think there was something like 10,000 tests relying on that. So well, that's where AI was a good candidate for helping us do that migration that ended up taking a few weeks instead of a few months. So that was a good, like, anecdotal proof point that there's something to be done here.
Awesome. That's fantastic. So, the thing that keeps popping in my mind is the diffusion of innovation, right? Where you have your enthusiasts right on the front side, like those are your ambassadors. So you've got that front part, but now you've got to move forward, right? And so I want to call back on something that came up in our last chat, and you talked about the illusion of alignment, and right, where everyone nods yes, right? So how do you know when you move on from this ambassador group, right, to your more security conscious, maybe a little more hesitant engineers, and they're like, okay, right, everyone has to at least pretend to be enthusiastic about AI adoption. How do you ensure you don't have that illusion of alignment as you move into that kind of more early adopter or early majority, kind of that big chunk of people, maybe a little more so in the middle?
I mean, in that case, it was sort of easy because you can measure. So you can measure the weekly active usage of the code tools. You can see the growth of the token usage and so on. So you can see if someone is not using it or has used it. So that was kind of easy. But to your point, like it's a bit of the carrot and the stick. A lot of it was the carrot at first because we were trying to encourage everybody to give it a try themselves. And then at some point, it was really more of a mandate saying, okay, in the next quarter, this is what we want to achieve as part of that initiative. There are actually very concrete metrics we want to achieve in terms of usage, in terms of projects that are supported by AI and so on. And then we measure. And if we think it's not going fast enough, then it's a management decision or management exercise to go see the team and understand why it didn't happen. One thing to call out, however, is that sometimes when there is resistance, it's for the good reasons. And for instance, one of the decisions that we made more recently as part of that journey was to say, we don't want AI code generation at all costs. We know that if everybody starts using AI to generate code, it's going to generate code. That's not a problem. But we don't want it at all costs because otherwise you're just creating a new bottleneck elsewhere. So actually our focus has been more about, okay, let's augment the software lifecycle in general, and code generation will come naturally after the fact. We don't need to focus on this. So let's focus on how can we improve code review, how can we improve product requirements generation and threat modeling and all the things that happen before coding and activities that happen after coding. And that's been our main focus those past months because that's where we know that if we don't bring everything up at the same time, well, we'll just get slower because we'll generate bottlenecks around the code. So.
I really like how you've pointed out that that these pockets, like sometimes resistance is going to be a good thing, right? And we're not here to generate code for code's sake. Like
Exactly.
we want to do it intelligently, and it's augmentation. How do you I know you talked about the usage and using using management to kind of look at like where the gaps and the peaks and the valleys are to understand right where there is some resistance. How do you create the conditions where people do feel comfortable to say like, hey, like this is right, I see a challenge in X or Y or Z. They feel comfortable enough to push back right on saying yes, right, I get it, augmentation good, but hold on here, we need to like I'm waving a red flag. How do you create those conditions?
So what we ended up doing is we already have quite a lot of what we call the guilds. So we have guilds by ecosystem. We have, for instance, an Android guild with all the Android developers. We have a web guild with all our web-based developers. And so we created an AI guild, which is that sort of community forum where everybody's contributing. There's actually training, knowledge sharing happening in that guild, but that also creates sort of an open space where people can feel free to express their thoughts and what the issues they faced and the things they didn't understand. And so I think that's and usually management is part of it without being part of it. It's more like a self-organized. Of course, we have a guild lead that is trying to host it and make sure that it's a lively community, but it's really done by the team itself. So I think that has helped surface the challenges that they were facing.
And kind of related to that, there's a level of speed, right? Where I think, right, it was starting slow and it's accelerating. I think this is something right we're seeing everywhere. Where most, if not all, organizations are feeling pressure to say like we got to figure this out, right? At some point, and it's no longer a if, it's a when, right?
Yeah.
How do you maintain a level of speed that is still ramping up, but you're still catching the stuff in the nooks and crannies, right? Like you said, that resistance that pops up from the folks, but we're not going too fast that suddenly the oops, right? Again, you being in the security space clearly relies heavily on you catching everything in those nooks and crannies. How do you ensure that you're not going too fast down these roads?
I don't think anybody knows, to be honest. Of course, you get like the board telling you, oh, you're going. I'm seeing people going faster in other organizations and so on. And so we're telling the board, yes, sure, but they're not a security product necessarily. So we need to have the right balance. What I think matters more in practice is that we show steady progress. We show that every quarter, every time we have an exec conversation or we have a board conversation, we can show what we've done and how we've gotten better at what we do. And by the way, there's a bit of tension here as well, because right now we're ramping up, and of course the costs are also ramping up, but it's going to be, I think, very complicated for anybody to really prove the ROI of AI. You can see it, you can feel it, you can perceive that it's improving your day-to-day and so on, but being able to put really dollar dollars behind the execution is going to be very complicated. And so I'm pretty sure at some point we'll hit a wall where our CFO will tell us, oh, but you're spending quite a lot on AI. Are we really getting the most out of it? And then there's going to be a conversation of how do we optimize our AI investments versus our output and productivity. It's the same thing for me in a way, at a way massive magnitude than when we had clouds coming up. The clouds were meant to help you accelerate and be more flexible and so on, but it came with a cost, and so you had to find the right balance between that speed and flexibility versus the cost.
Fantastic call out. I think like there's still I forget what article that I know I personally read that said AI is reducing work, but it's shifting how we work, right? It's shifting. Like sometimes it's actually adding work to your table, but maybe it's the right work, right? That's being put in front of you.
One thing for sure is that, I mean, you could assume, okay, with AI, because I'm more productive, I'm going to get time back and I can do other stuff. Well, that's not what I'm seeing, at least. What I'm seeing is that with AI, you can actually do 10 things in parallel instead of one. But that doesn't mean that the number of things you want to do are reduced. It just means that you're instead of testing 3 different things, you're going to test 10 different things at the same time to hope to get the good one. So it's I think there will be a point about ways of working and the way we approach it from work balance, not even work-life balance, but work balance, where we'll have to learn how to use those AIs in the right way so that we don't just burn out everybody with AI. So it's still early days. I don't have the solutions, but I'm feeling that pattern where it feels like we got superpowers, but now we need to learn how to use those.
Yes, we're Superman practicing with our laser vision. We're not quite sure exactly how it works yet, but we know we know it's gonna help at some point, right?
Exactly.
So I want to touch on the burnout aspect, and specifically from the point of like we're in such a space of accelerated change, and it feels like we're not done. It's gonna 6 months from now, a year from now, we're kind of in this, and I think we all understand that. But how do you, as a leader of people and teams, help create space to kind of manage that, right? Where we're not, our routine we may not have a routine for a while, right? It's consistently shifting and moving as a target. How do you lead through that part of the human side of this change?
I don't think the routine is that much changing yet. I mean, we're more like injecting AI inside the existing processes and inside the existing ritual and so on. The one thing that's started to blur the lines is what everybody can do. So product manager can start doing engineering work, an engineer can start doing product marketing work. So the boundaries between the roles are starting to blur a bit because there's more powers in a sense. But for now, and I still feel you're right. I think it will change the way we work and it will change our routines and so on. But I don't think we're there yet. I think today it's more like, okay, we're not yet in the disruption mode of the ways of working. It's more like the iterative mode. We'll see when we hit that wall of, okay, actually, we need to rethink everything. I've read articles saying, okay, now it's no longer teams of 5 engineers and 1 product manager because you can have a whole teams of AI agents coding for you. So the teams are going to get smaller, no longer the 2 pizza teams type of things. I've seen people saying, oh, but today you no longer need a designer and a product manager because anybody can be product engineers and they do everything, like a full stack, extended full stack type of role. I think everybody is testing, practicing, exploring, but I don't know that we know what's going to be the outcome here. And I think it's going to be, even though there's a fast pace in the technology, I think the switch for the humans are going to be a bit slower.
That makes sense. What skill sets do you think, or what skill sets do you see are maybe the more important skill sets now as we become more and more iterative, right, with AI, and so what skill sets do you think are becoming most valuable in the workplace?
I think the 2 key skills in the world today, which were already very important but are even more important with that AI world for me, are 1, ability to learn fast, because the things are changing so much that you need to be able to continuously teach yourself or like reinvent yourself, and 2, adaptability, because you don't know what tomorrow is made of, so you need to be very flexible both in your mind and in your ability to change the way you do things tomorrow. So
I love those. Absolutely. Frédéric, for a leader that's just in their early stages, right, of their AI journey, maybe they're only a few months in, maybe they think it's going well, what's a question they should be asking themselves that they probably aren't?
I mean, the one that keeps me up at night is, are we doing this in a secure way, for sure? Like, can we trust and can we make sure that we do it in a reliable way that's going to be good for our customers and good for our company going forward? And by the way, I'm more of an optimistic here. I trust and I assume that eventually actually AI will make our products more secure and our code more secure, because I mean humans generate mistakes and vulnerabilities, and we know that's a non-solved issue. So hopefully it will get better in the same way like airplane security improved in time and all those things. Like you know, when you take the human out of the loop to some extent, it's better. So from that secure standpoint, we'll see, but I'm optimistic.
Amazing, amazing. How about outside of work? What kind of AI tools are you using personally to, I don't know, make your life easier, better, or do you have time to even think of that?
No, I mean, surprisingly, I'm using it way less in my personal time than in my professional work, of course. But yeah, I've started using it to help plan my trips, my family trips, which is always a lot of logistics, and that's been pretty helpful. I actually think that it's way easier to actually ask questions in natural language than it used to be to do a Google search, because I mean, you need to be careful about what the AI answers, but that was also the case with the Google search. You needed to also be curating the answers to some extent. So the one thing I've been telling my kids is also that you need to, what's even more important in that world is critical thinking. So the ability to not trust this for what you see, and be able to have the background to be able to evaluate the answers and what it told you, because well, it still hallucinates quite a lot and it's still not perfect. And no matter what, even if it was perfect, you still need to make decisions. You're the final decision maker, not the AI.
Wonderful. That's some fantastic advice right there. Excellent. Frédéric, thank you so much. This has been amazingly valuable just for me. I'm sure our listeners are going to absolutely love it. Also for our listeners, if you want more of Frédéric, he constantly contributes on the Dashlane blog, so definitely check him out there. And that's our time. So thanks for joining us on Herding Squirrels, where we uncover the nuts and bolts of teams and change. Thank you. Thanks, Frédéric.
Thank you, Brandon.